The moment Alex stepped into the Zen-10 combat hall, they could feel the stares. Blue-scaled warriors lined the arena, some in armor, others in ceremonial sashes denoting rank, all watching with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. The human maintenance technician stood out like a dropped wrench in a plasma core, wearing reinforced coveralls streaked with grease, a utility belt loaded with tools, and an expression that could only be described as gleeful disbelief. Towering above the gathered spectators was Master Katz, the station's lead combat instructor, a veteran of 12 conflicts. His tail alone had its own intimidating reputation. Katz flicked that tail now, scales shimmering with irritation. As I said, human, Katz rasped, his frills twitching in what passed for bureaucratic exasperation. You must demonstrate basic defensive capabilities before you are cleared for unsupervised maintenance duties in restricted zones. Standard procedure. Alex grinned, wide, unbothered, and a little too mischievous. So let me get this straight. Because someone filed a complaint about the fragile human crawling around our high-voltage junctions, I now have to punch a lizard in front of an audience. Katz's frills flattened, pupils narrowing. That is a gross simplification. Oh, I'm not complaining, Alex said, bouncing lightly on their heels. I just want to make sure I'll get a copy of the footage. A few gasps rippled through the crowd. Several Zen-10 warriors shifted uncomfortably, their enjoyment fading into uncertainty. This wasn't how humans were supposed to act. They were supposed to be docile, easily overpowered, preferably trembling and over-explaining things. Not grinning. This is mandatory, Katz said, clearly attempting to regain control of the narrative. It has been filed and approved by the station's security office. Alex accepted the data pad and read through the formalized combat requirement, then promptly signed it with a flourish. Oh, perfect. Official and everything. Katz cleared his throat. Your first opponent will be Junior Warrior Trick. He is adequate. Trick stepped forward, young, gleaming, and trying his best not to look confused about being pitted against a human with grease on their elbow. Katz was still setting up the traditional opening stance demonstration when Alex abruptly dropped into a ready position, knees bent, posture centered. No eyes, no vital points, tap out to yield. Standard stuff, right? Alex said with a wink. Katz blinked. You are familiar with combat training? Alex cracked their neck and smiled. I grew up in New Detroit. But more importantly, I read your species biological index the day I took this job, including the appendix on nerve clusters and muscle reflex arcs. A hush fell over the crowd. When the fight began, Trick lunged with the confidence of a trained warrior. Unfortunately for him, Alex moved with the precision of someone who'd spent more time watching people fall than rise. They sidestepped, twisted, and threw Trick to the mat with a fluid hip toss that would have made an Earth judo master clap. The Zen-10 hit the mat with a thud, followed by silence. Oh no, Alex said, looking down with mock concern. Did I skip the formal starting signal? Sorry. Habit. Katz's jaw dropped. Literally. For a Zen-10, that was the equivalent of fainting from shock. That was a level 3 throw. Alex offered Trick a hand up, which the stunned warrior took automatically. On Earth, we call it a Tuesday, though technically it's judo, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, maybe wrestling. Look, I'm not picky. The murmur of whispers among the crowd grew louder. What had been entertainment was now unease. Katz forced composure back into his voice. Weapons demonstration, then, oh, yay! Alex said, practically skipping toward the weapons rack. I've been dying to see if your glaives are as badly balanced as the repair specs suggest. They grabbed an energy staff, gave it a casual spin, and then picked up a Relian Ward glaive with the enthusiasm of a kid in a candy shop. Hey, who modded the counterweight on this? That's actually, wow, this one's usable. Katz couldn't believe what he was seeing as Alex demonstrated not just familiarity, but fluency in multiple weapon styles, staffs, blades, even sonic disruptors. They moved like a weapon engineer who had studied every part not just to wield them, but to break them down and rebuild them stronger. You're a maintenance technician. Katz finally snapped. Where did you learn this? Alex shrugged, twirling the staff before carefully placing it back on the rack. You think I learned how to fix critical systems without learning how they might break, or how they might be used to break someone else? Engineering is war, on entropy. A new voice cut through the crowd. Is that why you asked me to recalibrate your grip tools last month? Everyone turned to see Chief Engineer, next Tara, her crystalline form sparkling with restrained amusement. Alex coughed. Depends. Which recalibration? The one that made your wrench perfectly weighted for head trauma. Oh, that one. Yeah, mostly for ergonomics. Weapon potential was just a happy coincidence. Katz looked like he was experiencing his first migraine. So, you're telling me, he said slowly, that our human technician has been armed this entire time. Alex laughed. Armed? Katz, I'm human. We turned improvised weaponry into an Olympic sport before we invented agriculture. Give me 5 minutes in any room, and I'll find 3 ways to arm myself with the furniture. The silence in the hall was now laced with fear. Alex looked around and, seeing no further objections, bowed. So do I pass? Katz's frills fluttered again, this time with something resembling respect. Pass. Human Alex. I believe you've just been promoted. Effective immediately. Assistant combat instructor. What? No. I fix things. I'm not. Chief Nextera chimed in. You've already been teaching half the station via your emergency safety drills. This just makes it official. Alex groaned, but couldn't hide the smile. Fine. But someone has to tell the poor soul who filed that complaint that they're now required to attend my advanced self-defense class. For safety reasons, of course. The crowd laughed nervously because deep down they were all realizing something terrifying. The human wasn't just qualified. The human had plans. The station's combat logs labeled it simply as Incident 47B. The station gossip referred to it as the day we learned not to underestimate maintenance. Either way, word had spread fast. By the next shift cycle, half the station had seen the replay footage. And while most expected the human technician's victory to be a one-off fluke, some clever trick, a lucky throw, the rest of the demonstrations quickly proved otherwise. Alex, still in grease-smudged coveralls, strolled casually across the weapons platform like a child let loose in a toy store. Is that a modified wart glaive? Oh, now this is a party. Master Cat Hacks, visibly rattled, tried to maintain his air of authority. Human, these are not toys. You are expected to select a weapon for your next test. Alex nodded, selecting the glaive, spinning it expertly in one hand. Sure, just let me recalibrate the balance. Better. The weapon whirred through the air with practiced ease, and a few of the younger recruits took an instinctive step back. The murmurs among the crowd turned to murmured calculations. Who was this person? What followed was a masterclass in kinetic fluency, 7 weapon systems, 0 hesitation, demonstrations so clean even the holographic simulators struggled to keep up. Alex didn't just know how to fight, they knew how to think with the equipment. I thought you were maintenance, one officer blurted. I am, Alex said between staff katas. But half of maintenance is figuring out how things break and how to prevent it. Knowing what causes failure makes you really good at predicting what can go wrong and how to fix it before it does. Another pause. Another revelation. Chief Engineer, next, Tara stepped forward, her crystalline lattice pulsing in a rhythm that others had come to associate with suppressed laughter. Is this why you requested reinforced ergonomic grips on your tools? Alex winced. Maybe you made your wrench handle into a weighted baton, she said, tone bordering admiration. You turned a plasma conduit valve into a focused directional energy emitter. That was an accident. Was it? Alex grinned. Mostly. Master Cathax's frills twitched. So, you're telling me you've been walking around with combat-ready tools for months? Alex's shrug was nonchalant, only because nobody issued me a sidearm. I figured improvising was safer. From the edge of the platform, someone whispered, "Did you hear about the time they turned a diagnostic drone into a hover trap?" I thought that was an urban legend. It is, but with Alex, it might also be a training module. Cathax took a step back and gave a slow, disbelieving nod. You are either the most dangerously creative human I've ever encountered, or the most effective. Alex held out the glaive to return it. Why not both? The combat master stared. You pass. Alex blinked. Really? You pass, and on unanimous command authority, are now our assistant combat instructor. A half-dozen observers spontaneously applauded. Others gaped in horror. One insectoid warrior fainted. What? No, I'm just here to repair faulty coolant junctions and fix stuck airlocks, Alex protested. And train alien soldiers to flip each other over without dislocating 6 joints. Chief Nex added helpfully. Alex sighed, rubbing the back of their neck. Okay, but only if we add cross-species safety seminars. And multicultural weapon familiarity drills. And no more ignoring pressure points, because they're too delicate to train with. Deal, Cathax said without hesitation. And Alex added, turning toward the anonymous figure who had originally filed the complaint about fragile humans, the person who got me into this situation, they're now my first student. Advanced class. Somewhere in the back, someone whimpered. By the end of the week, the training schedule had tripled. So had morale. Efficiency spiked. Interspecies incidents dropped. And every new recruit, no matter the species, learned a new rule. Never underestimate the human with a wrench. The station's training center wasn't supposed to look like a diplomatic embassy, but by the 3rd day after Incident 47B, it might as well have been. Aliens from half a dozen species gathered along the upper rails, watching the human technician-turned-warrior toss concepts, ideas, and occasionally people around like loose bolts. Alex stood in the center of the mat, holding a tablet in one hand and a modified torque wrench in the other. The wrench had been reinforced, balanced, and ever so slightly blunted. It still functioned as a maintenance tool, of course, but in the right hands, it also served as a shockingly elegant club. This, Alex said to the group, is a Type 4 decompression sealant applicator. And if you're ever cornered in an unlit corridor during a station lockdown, it also makes a passable baton, particularly if you're dealing with a 3-legged dromaxon who fights low to the ground. The dromaxon in question, a squat, multi-limbed maintenance apprentice named Vriv, raised a stubby hand from the back row. You say that like it's based on experience. Alex's grin said it all. Let's just say Vriv isn't the first engineer to underestimate a cornered human near a busted airlock. The crowd laughed nervously. Most still weren't sure how much of Alex's stories were truth, exaggeration, or, more terrifyingly, training exercises that had occurred. Master Cathax was nowhere to be seen today, not because he didn't care, but because he was re-evaluating combat criteria for non-warrior personnel after losing a 2-hour debate with Alex about whether maintenance schematics should include pressure point diagrams. He wasn't thrilled to learn the new proposed safety handbook had a chapter titled When the Toolkit Becomes the Battlefield. Chief Nex Terra, however, was watching intently from the side. Her crystalline body hummed at an unusually low resonance frequency, the Arcturian equivalent of a satisfied smile. So, she called out, how many of our maintenance staff have now passed the new defensive situational certifications? 17 as of this morning, Alex said proudly. 4 more pending. Vriv just needs to stop trying to flip people with their face. That's where my balance is. Vriv objected, which is great for balance. Alex agreed, but terrible for leverage. Trust me, you'll sprain a proboscis. The lesson resumed, this time integrating basic environmental awareness. As Alex laid out markers representing common station equipment, the recruits formed a loose ring, each instructed to fix a piece while simultaneously defending it from light sparring attacks. A common enough training trick, except most instructors didn't include sudden emergency power failures or the deployment of smoke-simulating fog modules mid-session. "What are you doing?" cried a startled Delvani instructor who had stopped by to observe. "Stress testing," Alex shouted through the mist, tackling a confused Zarian student into a padded foam barrier. Because you never know what the environment's going to throw at you in real emergencies. Simulate unpredictability, and people adapt faster. By the time the haze cleared, 2 toolkits had been repurposed into makeshift traps. Someone had constructed a perimeter alarm using only scrap couplings and an old sensor drone. And one of the new recruits was duct taping a heat panel into an anti-shock shield. It wasn't traditional. It was better. Later, back in the chief engineer's office, next Tara reviewed the security footage. "Are you aware," she said slowly, "that your students are now designing their own hybrid protocols?" Alex nodded. "Yes, I gave them the framework, told them to mix what works from every species, and ditch the rest. They've created 6 new stances already. One of them incorporates Flaxian fluid motion and Zarian spinal momentum. It's weirdly elegant. And also," the chief added dryly, "potentially lethal." Alex smiled without apology. "It's not just about fighting. It's about understanding each other's physical realities. What better way to build trust than learning how someone moves, breathes, reacts, and throws you across a room?" Next, Tara said, clearly amused. "That too," Alex agreed. She stood, her crystalline limbs pulsing with ambient light. "I'm authorizing expansion. Triple the mat space. Add kinetic feedback sensors to the combat floor, and we'll need to reinforce the walls. Expecting more students. Expecting more everything." Because it wasn't just a training program anymore. It was a movement. The station's primary diplomatic chamber, usually a realm of formal declarations and barely veiled threats wrapped in layers of etiquette, had never been so tense over gravity. Alex stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, grease-streaked sleeves rolled to the elbows, watching a holo display of gravitational harmonics twist into what could only be described as an architectural migraine. "With all due respect, Ambassador," Alex began, gesturing toward the hologram, "this is not how gravity works." The Flaxian ambassador's tentacles curled in indignation, their pale bioluminescent nodes blinking red in what Alex had learned was equal parts confusion and frustration. "We have triple verified the calculations. The gravitational field harmonics are flawless by our standards." "Right," Alex said, pulling out a tablet. "Standards designed for your physiology, which, in case it slipped anyone's mind, consists of 14 pseudolimbs and a center of mass that literally oscillates. The moment you apply that to a corridor shared by zentans and crystalliform species, you're going to create a biomechanical disaster." Ambassadors blinked, tentacles twitched, and one gaseous envoy began to vent steam nervously. Chief Engineer, next, Tara watched from the side, her crystalline body refracting light in a subtle shimmer that suggested she was suppressing amusement. She'd warned them. Everyone had warned them. But no one listened until the maintenance tech with a combat instructor's voice told them physics didn't care about diplomatic posturing. "Let me put it this way," Alex continued, pulling up a second projection. "If you implement your gravity proposal in Sector 7, this part," they zoomed in on the schematic, highlighting a corridor junction, "will turn into a zero-gravity slingshot. Anyone entering from the Arcturian Commons will ricochet into the sanitation ducts at roughly Mach 2. That seems inadvisable, murmured one of the more reasonable envoys. Not unless you're trying to launch interstellar trash diplomacy. There was a tense beat of silence. I fail to see why a combat instructor has any jurisdiction over station-wide gravitational regulations. The Flaxian ambassador protested, tentacles nodding. Surely this is an engineering issue. Next, Tara stepped forward, her voice chiming softly but with steel beneath it. Our combat instructor is also our lead field analyst for maintenance risk engineering, gravitational biomechanics, and emergency response coordination. She designed half the training protocols your own envoys now use for safe station movement. And Alex added cheerfully, I once redesigned a ventilation system using spare parts from a tactical drone and a cafeteria table, which means I'm qualified in at least 3 overlapping fields and am technically the only person in this room who's done hand-to-hand combat in variable gravity. With a wrench. There was an audible gulp from the back row. One delegate discreetly adjusted their chair. A small projection shimmered into being behind Alex, a side-by-side comparison of species physiology and how their balance shifted with different gravity standards. Alien knees, rotational inertia, and tail-assisted torque mechanics danced in slow motion. This is why, Alex said, pointing, you can't just treat everyone like they fit your gravity model. We don't all bend the same way. Hell, some of us don't bend at all. But our people are used to our standard, the ambassador countered. To live differently is destabilizing. Try being the only species with breakable bones and squishy internals on a combat ship where the average handshake can dislocate your shoulder. Alex shot back. We adapt. You can too. Slowly, resistance started to soften. Even the more stubborn delegates were beginning to follow the logic, if not the delivery. Finally, next Tara stepped forward again. Alex has proposed a modular gravity protocol, adaptive resonance fields configured per room, customizable on entry. It requires a minor systems upgrade, not a full overhaul. But more importantly, it's already been field tested. Alex interjected. In our combat training simulations, with great success and only one mild concussion. But that one was Zektak's fault, not the gravity's. Zektak, a bulky reptilian with a bandaged horn, nodded solemnly. I forgot humans can't rotate 270 degrees mid-jump. I learned much. By the time the vote was cast, the proposal had passed, barely, but decisively. A ripple of sighs and weary relief spread across the room. As the envoys began to file out, Alex collected their gear, tablet tucked under one arm. Next, Tara joined them, her voice low and amused. You know, when I said you were a diplomatic nightmare with a torque wrench, I meant it fondly. Alex grinned. I try. And we still need to address your habit of giving physics lectures during treaty sessions. Hey, if I don't teach them now, I'll just be patching them up later. They walked side by side out of the chamber, leaving behind a council slightly shaken, but a whole lot wiser. One delegate muttered as they passed, "How does one become a maintenance tech like that?" From the hallway, Alex called back without turning, "Step 1. Never assume you won't have to teach quantum mechanics to a diplomat using hand puppets and gravity boots." And with that, diplomacy, as always, took another surprising step forward, powered by coffee, sarcasm, and a highly weaponized understanding of spatial geometry. The training chamber was unusually quiet, eerily so. A dozen alien cadets of varying species stood in loose formation, waiting for Alex to finish calibrating the holographic projection hovering midair. It displayed a rotating schematic of the station's gravity control system, overlaid with biomechanical combat graphs. Beneath it, Alex was grinning. "Okay," they said, spinning a stylus between their fingers. Who here thinks gravity is just down? The recruits exchanged uneasy glances. A few raised appendages, tentacles, claws, and crystalline pseudopods. Alex beamed. Perfect. You're all wrong. Gravity is also sideways, diagonal, inversely reactive, and occasionally up if you hang out near the reactor coils long enough. From the observation balcony, Commander Vexenal watched silently, their bioluminescent patches pulsing a contemplative green. Beside them stood Ambassador Khazar of the Flaxian Consulate, whose species had been the recent subject of a quiet diplomatic incident involving a corridor gravity malfunction that left half a sector spiraling in zero-G slow motion for 4 minutes. This is the human you said could resolve gravitational conflict through combat training? Khazar asked skeptically, their 6 eye stalks swiveling to focus on Alex, who had just begun levitating a mop with a local gravpulse field. Vexenal nodded slowly. Watch. Down below, Alex had split the class into trios. Each team now floated in isolated microgravity bubbles of slightly varying force levels. Zentans, Alex called, pointing at the scaly warrior trio. Gravity makes your tail your best friend or worst liability. Use it as an anchor. Flaxians, Alex spun around and tossed a foam baton to the tentacled students. Stop flailing. Flow with the drift, like seaweed in a current. Arcturians, remember your mass variance. You're walking crystals. Think resonance, not resistance. The chamber transformed. What looked at first like uncoordinated chaos became an elegant ballet of shifting physics. Warriors countered one another with tail sweeps, midair tentacle redirections, and calculated refractive momentum. Some even began improvising, using the gravity bubbles to redirect energy pulses from practice staves in ways that made Commander Vexenal's eyebrows twitch upward in surprise. How exactly is this helping us avoid conflict? Ambassador Khazar asked, still watching with faint disdain. Because it's empathy, Ambassador, Vexenal replied, tone calm. Not just physically adapting to one another, but mentally accepting the premise that there's more than one center of gravity in the universe. Just then, Alex clapped once, and the simulations halted. Everyone floated in a synchronized moment of stillness, calm in the gravity storm. Lesson of the day, Alex called. Your enemies aren't always trying to destroy you. Sometimes they just grew up on a planet where up means something else. Scattered laughter filled the room, including from the observers above. Khazar let out a slow, rippling sigh. This may have merit. Alex was already climbing a ladder to reset the grav harmonic generator when Kex, one of the cadets, called up. Instructor, is it true that your species once weaponized centrifugal force using folding chairs and physics misunderstandings? Alex looked down, eyes glinting. Kid, we've weaponized confusion. This stuff, just science class with a sense of humor. The door hissed open behind the observers, revealing Chief Nextera with a clipboard, her crystalline edges gleaming. We've just had a request from the Academy for a demonstration of gravitational diplomacy, she said dryly. Alex grinned. You think they're ready for spin-kick kinetic arbitration? Commander Vexenal turned to Khazar, bioluminescence flickering again. You asked me how this would help resolve conflict. I submit, a race that can debate physics while dodging in zero-G might just be ready to mediate planetary disputes. Or start them, Khazar muttered, but didn't argue further. Below them, one of the cadets launched into an aerial flip that used dual gravity fields to perform a flawless midair pin. Another cheered. Someone floated upside down and offered Alex a high five. That, Alex said as they caught the high five mid-float, is the sound of progress. The Galactic Council conference room was not designed for combat instructors. It was built for ambassadors, dignitaries, and the occasional political meltdown involving food-based insults. But now, Seated squarely in front of the Flaxian ambassador and a semicircle of concerned officials was Alex, human maintenance tech combat instructor, and very much not a diplomat. Ambassador, Alex began, gesturing toward a floating gravity map with a data stylus. With all due respect, that's not how gravity works. Flaxian ambassador Jextal's tentacles writhed in what could only be described as offended geometry. Are you suggesting our engineers are mistaken? Their translator unit chirped with overly polite disbelief. Not mistaken, Alex said, holding up their hands. Just not accounting for the fact that your gravitational constant doesn't play nice with Zarian kinetic biology, Arcturian crystal harmonics, or Neelian nervous systems that interpret sudden changes in gravity as a musical threat. A hush fell over the room. One Neelian delegate blinked sideways, alarmed. Chief Engineer Nextera, shimmering beside the conference table like a particularly smug chandelier, chimed in. Perhaps we should let Alex demonstrate. Demonstrate? Ambassador Jextal asked. Suspicious. Alex grinned. Oh, yeah. Field trip. 15 minutes later, they were in the combat training arena, which, thanks to Alex's constant meddling, also doubled as a physics lab, a cultural center, and a surprisingly effective therapy space. Alex flipped a few switches, adjusting the localized gravity fields to simulate the proposed settings from the ambassador's engineering plan. Okay, they said, watch what happens when a Flaxian tries to walk next to a Zarian in this mess. 2 volunteers, one long, gelatinous, and floating, the other tall, scaled, and bristling, stepped forward. As the gravity shifted, the Zarian's balance collapsed into an awkward stumble, while the Flaxian's tentacles began twitching in an involuntary waltz. This, Alex pointed, is the diplomatic equivalent of slipping on a banana peel in the middle of a peace treaty. You're exaggerating, the ambassador hissed. I'm illustrating. Alex shot back. Now watch this. They hit a few more controls. The arena adjusted again, this time applying adaptive gravity microzones, Alex's favorite creation. As the volunteers stepped forward, the gravity around each adjusted subtly, syncing to their physiology. They walked together smoothly. There, Alex said, folding their arms. Harmony. No tumbles. No impromptu dancing. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Jextal's tentacles twisted in a soft pattern of contemplation that actually felt more stable. Alex smiled. Diplomacy starts with not knocking each other over. Back in the council chambers, the temperature of the conversation had cooled considerably. Now Alex was leading a slide presentation titled Combat Principles in Conflict Mediation. See, Alex continued, flipping to a diagram. Fighting teaches you more than punching. It teaches you timing, positioning, and reading someone's intent. That's why we use combat classes to build empathy. You're telling us that throwing each other across the room helps us understand each other? Ambassador Zelen asked skeptically. Yes, Alex replied without hesitation. Nothing builds respect like a well-executed hip toss. And nothing clears up a misunderstanding like learning how your opponent breathes. Several aides typed notes furiously. Chief Engineer, Nextera stepped forward, holding a pad. I'd also like to note that since Alex began integrating training with emergency systems, station maintenance efficiency has increased by 47%, and interpersonal conflict has decreased by 60%. Correlation does not equal causation, someone murmured. No, Nextera said with a gleam in her crystalline matrix, but the Flaxian delegation has stopped declaring war on the Neelians every time someone sneezes, and that's good enough for me. Later that day, Alex returned to the combat deck to find Kex and a few of the other advanced students practicing movement patterns under altered gravity fields. From above, it looked like a graceful dance of limbs, balance, and adaptation. You're All doing amazing, Alex said, clapping their hands. Just remember, the goal isn't to beat your opponent. It's to understand them enough that you don't have to. Is that why you got into diplomacy? Kex asked. Alex smirked. I got into diplomacy because I once fixed a coolant leak while mediating a shouting match between 3 ambassadors and a malfunctioning vending unit. This is just a side effect. You think the Academy will be ready for this? Kex asked. Alex looked across the training floor, where species that once glared across battlefields now sparred with precision and laughter. They better be, Alex said, because ready or not, this is the new standard. The Galactic Central Academy had contingency protocols for nearly everything: black hole proximity, sentient math outbreaks, even an incident involving a diplomatic scandal caused by misinterpreted interpretive dance. But nothing in the handbook had prepared them for Alex. At precisely 0800 station time, a gravity anomaly in Training Chamber 3B caused a routine sparring match to escalate into a spiraling ballet of species-specific flailing. Arms, tentacles, and crystalline limbs launched in unintended directions as the gravitational field fluctuated every 2.3 seconds. It was glorious. At the center of it all, Alex stood like a conductor of symphonic chaos. No, no, no. If your tail goes up when the gravity shifts, you're going to roll left, not forward. Watch Kex's posture. A dozen students, representing at least 6 species and 2 questionable plasma life forms, adjusted their stances. They had learned to listen, not because Alex was loud, though they were, but because Alex's absurd experiments always worked. Above them, Dean Yak and Master Loai stood in the observation bay. The Dean's crystalline form flickered with involuntary panic, while Loai's scales shimmered in what had become their usual state around Alex: horrified admiration. You've allowed the human to reprogram the chamber's gravity field into pulsating microzones, Dean Yak whispered. I authorized nothing, Loai murmured. They convinced the janitorial AI to help. I'm sorry, the janitorial AI? He said it was bored and needed a hobby. Back on the floor, Alex was demonstrating how a Zenian suplex became 5 times more effective if the gravitational polarity was reversed mid-throw. It's all about redirecting force vectors, Alex explained, using a Zentan volunteer as both assistant and projectile. Remember, conservation of momentum is your friend, but inertia is your frenemy. The poor Zentan landed in a padded ring designed for gravitational deceleration, bounced, and gave a thumbs up. Totally worth it. See, Alex said, turning to a confused Arcturian. Your species can't technically supplex, but if we change the gravity field just so, bam. Congratulations, you're a one-being wrecking crew. One of the students, a Flaxian ambassador in training, raised a tentative tentacle. Instructor Alex, if the gravity's always changing, how do we maintain balance? Excellent question. Alex beamed. You don't. You adapt. The goal isn't stability, it's fluidity. You surf the shift. Zenian warriors already do this instinctively. We just made it official. The ambassador's tentacles twisted thoughtfully, like diplomacy. Exactly, Alex said. You've been doing the combat metaphor the whole time. I knew I liked you. Meanwhile, the station's AI had begun offering commentary in real time. Microzone 4, a gravity shift spike detected. Suggest students engage core stabilization, unless you're into low-orbit cartwheels. The Arcturian student next to the speaker let out a grumble as he was gently launched sideways into a foam barrier. Not helpful, AI. Your complaint has been logged. Would you like a smoothie? Dean Yak covered his crystalline face with one fractal palm. This is not education. This is metaphysical stand-up comedy, laced with gym class. Loai, however, had already begun taking notes. Look at the kinetic awareness they're developing. This isn't chaos. It's ballet. It's interdimensional ballet, Alex shouted, having heard them through the open balcony mic. Chapter 7 in my field notes, Adaptive Zones and Zenian Suplexes. Subtitle, When in Doubt, Flip the Lizard. A nearby Zenian blinked. Should I be offended or honored? Yes, Alex replied. At that exact moment, the gravitational wave pattern shifted from sinusoidal to harmonic loop, an experimental setting that caused all participants to rise 6 inches off the ground every 0.4 seconds. Students immediately transitioned into floating counterstances. The AI piped in again. Congratulations! You are now performing diplomacy at 1.2x the narrative intensity. Engage flare accordingly. I knew giving that AI sarcasm parameters was a bad idea. The dean groaned. Alex launched into another demonstration, this time involving a training MOP 20G chairs, and something they called the diplomatic feint and spin maneuver. It was majestic. It was baffling. It worked. Later that day, over hydrating cubes and spiced nutrient bars, the students reflected on the morning's lesson. I think I actually understand the gravitational matrix now, said the Flaxian. I think I accidentally dislocated my third elbow, replied the Arcturian. But, strategically. Are we sure Instructor Alex isn't part quantum? Kex muttered, and above them, in the observation deck, Master Loai turned to Dean Yak with a look of calm finality. Call the curriculum board. We're updating the syllabus. To what? Loai's scales shimmered again. To whatever that was. He gestured below, where Alex was now teaching a floating AI assistant to juggle zero-gravity safety cones while reciting cultural metaphors. Dean Yak sighed. Fine, but I'm not approving any more smoothie requisitions until they submit the list before they install micro-levitating citrus dispensers. By the time Alex's zero-gravity pancake breakfast became a sanctioned diplomatic event, most of the Galactic Academy had quietly agreed on 2 things. Nothing involving the human was ever just routine. Breakfast was now classified as a strategic negotiation tool. It started innocently enough. Alex had set up a casual cooking demo in the variable gravity chamber, just a small bonding activity for maintenance and engineering students. Pancakes, they reasoned, were the great equalizer. No matter the species, planet of origin, or dietary processing system, almost everyone enjoyed something round, flat, and cooked to golden perfection. But word spread fast. Within half an hour, the Flaxian ambassador floated in, tentacles twitching curiously at the scent of sizzling batter. Then came Master Loai, lured by the idea of testing gravitational wave modulation through syrup density. The crystalline dean hovered outside the doorway until a particularly aggressive pancake flip reversed local gravity for 6 seconds and knocked their monocle off. After that, the entire room transformed. The humans called it a brunch. The Academy called it a cross-disciplinary, low-gravity culinary diplomacy forum. Everyone else just called it the Pancake Accord. Alex flipped a pancake midair with the finesse of someone who had spent far too many hours calculating rotational torque from butter-fueled propulsion. The trick, they said, is managing gravitational resonance with a side of maple chaos. The statement, as ridiculous as it sounded, triggered a debate on gravitational harmonics, syrup viscosity under hypervariable conditions, and whether a flapjack could be used to model temporal compression rings. Spoiler, it could. One Zenian delegate began sketching orbital defense solutions on a plate using blueberry syrup. A vapor being from Sector 12' asked if the syrup's chemical structure could be weaponized. Master Loai calmly adjusted the gravity field, so a piece of banana landed precisely in the ambassador's coffee. That's why we never let the humans cook unattended, he remarked. Meanwhile, the AI barista, still wearing a Hawaiian apron gifted by Alex, invented the quantum macchiato. It existed in 2 states until observed and was simultaneously caffeinated and not. They sold 72 of them, before someone realized it also hummed with ominous frequency when stirred counterclockwise. By the end of the event, Alex was floating with a spatula in one hand, syrup on their cheek, and 3 ambassadors arguing over who got the last pancake. No weapons had been drawn. No interstellar trade routes threatened. In fact, someone had just offered to share planetary landing rights in exchange for the waffle recipe. That night, a new update hit the Academy's Cultural Exchange database. Entry July 4th, 92, Human Pancake-Based Peace Initiatives. Viable. The Pancake Accord, as it was dubbed unofficially, spread across the Academy like a contagion of good cheer. What began as a one-off event became a recurring phenomenon. Soon, departments were integrating culinary improvisation into training modules. Gravitational cooking classes were scheduled next to tactical simulations. Debate clubs included flavor pairings in their argument structure. And alien etiquette courses adopted don't flip pancakes during treaty signings unless asked as a standard rule. 1 week later, a young Arcturian student turned in a thesis entitled Tactical Flapjacks and Interstellar Harmony, a study in syrup-based diplomacy. It received full marks. As for Alex, they continued hosting breakfast training sessions under the gravity dome. Every lesson combined combat stances with utensil maneuvering. Every pancake flipped became a statement. Balance the field. Respect momentum. Anticipate variables. Share the syrup. The Flaxian ambassador returned weekly. Master Loai began teaching a course called Theoretical Physics and the Perfect Crepe. And the dean? They eventually just moved their entire administrative office 2 doors down from the gravity kitchen, citing strategic oversight reasons, but more truthfully to get a seat at the griddle early. Alex, watching it all unfold with coffee in hand and grease on their coveralls, simply grinned. Who knew syrup could be a unifying field? The Galactic Central Academy had seen many strange things, but nothing quite prepared it for the day that interspecies diplomacy devolved, or perhaps evolved, into a floating breakfast brawl featuring zero-gravity pancakes and transdimensional coffee. Alex floated through the culinary diplomacy chamber with a serene grace, flipping a pancake so perfectly it orbited a nearby Flaxian's head like a syrupy halo. Okay, they called out, voice projecting easily across the multi-gravity arena. Zenian flour reacts to heat in exactly the opposite way you think it will, so no direct plasma bursts. Gently, like coaxing a malfunctioning coolant line. Master Loai, levitating beside a customized gravity interface, nodded approvingly. Their technique is unorthodox, he whispered to the crystalline dean of the academy, but remarkably effective at reducing interspecies tension. On the far side of the chamber, the Flaxian ambassador was awkwardly attempting to fold a pancake midair using 2 tentacles and an air current. I believe this is supposed to represent unity, they asked, confused but intrigued. Exactly. Alex grinned. Food is combat in its softest form. It's all about balance, pressure, timing, and the strategic deployment of syrup. The AI barista, now proudly wearing an apron that read Percolator of Peace, handed over steaming mugs of quantum-roasted coffee. Each one matched the neurological tolerance and temperature preference of its recipient, thanks to some behind-the-scenes tinkering by Alex's multi-species student squad. Initiating brew cycle 4. Activating diplomatic foam. The AI announced, and a heart-shaped swirl formed atop the ambassador's drink. Somewhere in the crowd, a nervous Arcturian student muttered, "Is this really diplomacy?" "Yes," said Alex, spinning midair and using a spatula to redirect a misfired gravity pancake before it splattered against the dean's forehead. "Because everyone here, right now, is learning. Cooperation under controlled chaos. Communication under syrup." "But we haven't discussed treaties," protested a rigid Zenian law clerk. "Oh, please," Alex scoffed, now bouncing gently off the ceiling. You think a treaty means anything if you can't trust each other in a variable gravity kitchen? The answer, judging by the silence, was no. From the observation deck above, the Academy's leadership watched, stunned. Reports had come in about Alex's unusual training methods, combining physical combat with technical expertise, weaving in diplomacy like a hidden thread, but none of them had mentioned pancake diplomacy. Master Loai, adjusting gravity fields with surgical precision, turned to the dean. They've created an environment where instinct becomes dialogue, and chaos becomes consensus. This is evolution. I was hoping for a less sticky evolution, the dean replied dryly as syrup floated past their ocular lens. Then something entirely unexpected happened. A small, spherical drone, originally meant to monitor training vitals, activated without command and projected a hologram into the center of the chamber. It was a timeline. Not just any timeline, but one showing measurable dips in interspecies hostility, increased physical cooperation metrics, and a spike in stress-reducing neurochemical readings, all since Alex initiated what had officially been filed as variable gravity cultural exchange, culinary variant. The dean stared at it. That's statistically impossible. No, said the AI barista, who was now spinning mugs like a bartender in a zero-G movie. It's just human. Alex floated down slowly, like the world's weirdest deity descending from a carbohydrate-based cloud. I told you, the best way to resolve tension is with pancakes, coffee, and a little strategic grappling. Strategic grappling? The dean blinked. Yeah. Alex winked, because after breakfast, we're doing a workshop on interspecies pressure points, diplomacy and de-escalation with live volunteers. The collective groan of several diplomats trying to process the idea of being folded like lawn chairs was drowned out by a cheer from the student cohort. In the weeks to come, the Academy would adopt 3 new official modules: combat engineering with maintenance applications, gravitational negotiation in mixed species zones, diplomacy through food, pancake edition, and somewhere deep within the Academy's bureaucratic core, a new memo would circulate quietly. If you encounter unexpected peace-breaking among diplomatic parties, initiate code syrup. Deploy the human. The chamber once reserved for tactical combat simulations now smelled faintly of syrup and sizzling batter. Alex floated in the center of what had unofficially become the zero-gravity culinary diplomacy chamber, a spatula in one hand and a pouch of low-viscosity maple substitute trailing lazily in orbit around them like a personal planetary ring. Below, or above, depending on your orientation, Master Loai adjusted the ambient gravity fields with serene focus, ensuring each pancake flip obeyed the laws of physics, only as far as it was comedically useful. All right, Trax, Alex called to a 3-limbed gelatinous being attempting a midair flip. You're overcompensating. Pull back the 3rd pseudopod. Let the syrup guide you. Let the syrup guide me? Trax echoed in confusion. Exactly. Alex grinned. The syrup knows. Nearby, the Flaxian ambassador executed a surprisingly elegant twist, catching a floating pancake on a plate woven from their own tendrils. I must admit, I underestimated the value of carbohydrate-based diplomacy. You and most of the galaxy, Alex replied cheerfully, dodging a flying pat of zero-G butter. Now you see why Earth has a Department of Breakfast Affairs. Unofficial, but highly respected. The AI barista, still wearing its apron from the Galactic Council Cafe incident, served espresso with a flourish that defied known laws of trajectory. Today's blend, it intoned proudly, exists in both roasted and unroasted states simultaneously. Best not to observe it directly. Dean Yak hovered at the edge of the chamber, crystalline features twitching between skepticism and surrender. Is there a reason, they asked delicately, why the most respected educational institution in the galaxy is currently hosting a food fight masquerading as a physics seminar? Alex gave a shrug only possible in microgravity. Because it works. Works to achieve what exactly? Alex gestured to the bizarre scene. Xenians laughing alongside Arcturians, crystalline beings collaborating with amorphous ones, pancakes drifting between them like edible peace treaties. Connection, Alex said simply, understanding, collaboration, and also, look. They jabbed a finger toward one of their students who had just successfully executed a quantum flip catch maneuver with 3 pancakes and a spatula woven from repurposed engineering filaments that took mastery of trajectory, species-specific kinematics, and variable gravity harmonics. If they can do that with pancakes, imagine what they'll do in a crisis. Master Loai gave a slow nod. It is true. There is no greater test of balance and timing than trying to land a fully garnished short stack on a spinning plate in 0G. And the laughter? Alex added, you don't get that in war rooms. You get it in kitchens, or cafes, or on orbital training platforms when someone accidentally launches a pancake into a wormhole. Everyone in the chamber paused. You didn't. The dean whispered in alarm. It's fine. Alex called out quickly. We labeled it. Earth 3047 might just get breakfast delivery. The AI barista chimed in. With whipped cream. Dean Yak finally sighed and floated toward the center. Fine. I admit it. Your methods are unconventional. Say it, but effective. Alex beamed. I love it when a plan comes together. Just promise me, the dean continued. You'll warn us before introducing. What did you call it? The interdimensional sandwich protocol. Alex floated backward in mock offense. I would never introduce such volatile innovation without full multiversal consent. Probably. In the background, the Flaxian ambassador raised a fresh pancake high to Earth, and its infuriating, irresistible breakfast diplomacy. Cheers, the chamber chorused, some telepathically, some sonically, others through flavor resonance. And just like that, the galaxy took one more improbable step toward unity, not through treaties or firepower, but through improvisation, laughter, and syrup that defied gravitational classification. Because sometimes the best way to build peace is to serve it warm, golden, and stacked high with chaos.